but what was good is that I didn't have fear. It didn't matter that the jokes weren't working. I was in love with the fact that I was on the stage. I was in love with the fact that there were people in the crowd and that I had a microphone in my hand. Every joke didn't work, but I would figure it out. The silence didn't deter me from wanting to be a comedian. I wanted to be a comedian.
How do you go from, told me you were selling shoes at one stage of your life and you get your breakthrough. How do you go from that to, one of the highest paid entertainers in the world, man, who makes people laugh all over the earth?
Opportunity, when you get dealt certain hands, sometimes you have no idea what the turn is going to be. And for me, it was always the thought. It was a thought of doing comedy, but I just never knew how. I never knew what to do or the approach to take, how to get there. And one day the suggestion came up from coworkers of, Kevin, there's an amateur night right around the corner at a comedy club called the Laugh House in Philadelphia. You should go do it. And I was like, I would love to do it. I never knew that these things existed. And when I got the opportunity to do that, I fell in love with the moment that I didn't know how to go get. I fell in love with the spotlight, with the stage that I didn't know existed for me. I didn't know it was available for me at that time. And once I found out how to get it, there was nothing else that mattered except that. It was about that and that only.
How was that first time? Tell me about that first experience.
First time on stage was absolutely awful. I was horrible, people. I was
Did you have a set prepared? Did you go there to
Yeah, I had jokes prepared. They just weren't good jokes. But what was good is that I didn't have fear. It didn't matter that the jokes weren't working. I was in love with the fact that I was on the stage. I was in love with the fact that there were people in the crowd and that I had a microphone in my hand. Every joke didn't work, but I would figure it out. The silence didn't deter me from wanting to be a comedian. I wanted to be a comedian. I just didn't know how to do it.
How long? Tell us a little bit about your background with your dad, your mom, and when did you decide you really wanted to be a comedian?
I wanted to be a comedian after I saw Eddie Murphy Delirious.
Oh.
My dad wasn't in my house that often, but when he was an Eddie Murphy fan, Richard Pryor fan. And I remember Delirious. I remember sneaking and watching Eddie Murphy and seeing my household laugh at Eddie Murphy. And the quotes would go on for days and weeks about what he said. I remember Richard Pryor albums and my dad laughing with his friends and Richard Pryor and the things he said and how true they were and how he was a bad man and they loved him. And what I found is that comedy brought my dad and his surroundings together. So for the dark moments that my dad had in his life, which were a lot, the memories that I have that are all positive are associated with comedy. They're associated with laughter. Wow. So at a young age, I saw the power of laughter. There was such a negative cloud over my home that when I got to see what laughter did, it made me embody just that. So I wanted to bring that not just to my household, but to people. So I became the class clown. I became the funny guy day in, day out to my mother, to my brother.
Your mom was really serious, right?
My mom was very strict.
Tell us about that. And were you able to get her to laugh?
I made my mom laugh. And my mom she's just a no-nonsense person. It would be a couple, then it'd be, boy, get out of my face. Go sit your little ass down somewhere. It wasn't too much. What I love the most, though, is that there was a high level of support from my mother. Yeah. There was always support. There was never a negative tone of what I couldn't do. It was always whatever you put your mind to is what you can achieve. So when I got old enough to make the decision and say I wanted to do stand-up comedy, it wasn't met with negativity. It was met with reinforced positivity. And there was a timeline that was given to make it work. And if I didn't, I had to go and do what she suggested.
What was that?
It was a year. I had a year. I had a year to figure it out.
What did you have to do what she suggested? What was
I had to go to school. I had to go to school.
To study what?
It didn't matter. She wanted me in school.
School.
Yeah, I wasn't the best student, people. I went to community college for 2 weeks. Failed several tests at that time. Self-esteem was low.
You seem to have done okay in spite of that.
Yeah, I did okay, but don't go Google my SAT scores or nothing after this. It's extremely low right now. Okay.
Your mom was the largest influence on you. It sounds
100%. Yes.
And what did you get from your mom most?
Drive. My mother was a woman that was never content. We were talking downstairs and I told you, I said, the one thing that I've taken from my mom that's just it's branded in me. You know, it's, you get one life, and out that one life, you're only going to get out of it what you put into it. And information is free. That's what she always used to say. There's so much free information. She stayed in school. She always wanted more. She wanted more degrees. She just wanted to learn. And our biggest fights came with me not wanting to learn. You know, naturally as a kid, I wasn't that great of a student. I didn't care for school. I didn't want school. But as I got older and I become, you know, I started to find my way. I became an individual that realized the power of the thing that was preached to me so much, which was knowledge and information. So the thing that I've taken from my mom is that feeling of never being content, never being okay with where you are, because after every level is another level, whether you realize it or not. And I always wanted to see what was past the thing that I got. I got here, but what was back there? I was never content with being here. So when you look at me now, you know, as a successful comedian, actor, and you start to realize the tears, put the model in there. You know, you look at producer, you look at writer, you look at, you know, network owner, you know, radio channel that I own, author. There's so many things that are acting as olive branches to a tree, because I realized that tree just grows. It doesn't stop growing. A tree only stops if you choose to say, I'm not watering anymore. But at the age 40, I feel like there's so much more water that I can put in this tree, and so many more things that I can have hang from my tree. And that comes just from my mother's ability to reinforce. And what you think a child isn't receiving, he may not be at the moment, but at a later time, the light bulb will go off, and it's, oh shit, that's what that was about. My lessons that were taught to me at the young age of 14 through 18 have clicked in at the age 24 to now going on 40. This is when I realized all the work that she put in and what she was doing.
The imprinting,
100%.
The impact.
100%.
She passed at, what, in 2006?
2006, yes.
She passed 2006. What was that like for you? Because she was such an influence in your life, and I heard that she didn't talk much about your comedy, if I heard this correctly, but you found all this material that she'd been collecting. How did that touch you?
You know, my mom she was a very religious woman. So a little fact about my mother is that she never came to any of my comedy shows when I started. Even if things were going good, she never attended a comedy show. Never. And it never bothered me because she supported me, but she didn't like the environment. She didn't like alcohol. She didn't like smoking. She didn't like cuss words. So she never went. And I was okay with that because that's not what she is about. But she would always ask how it went. Always wanted to know if it was still the passion that I felt that it was for me, and if I was going to go through with it. We had conversations about it.